Hello! Today, I wanted to show you a couple of methods for normalizing data in Python. Now, data normalization is particularly important when we're dealing with user input. Okay, as I'm sure you know from your own computer usage, there are numerous ways to fill out fields on websites, search engines, etc. You could type in uppercase, lowercase, you can use punctuation or not, several different ways to enter information, right? For example, if you were entering your phone number, you might do it like this. Use parentheses, a hyphen, right? Or you could type a string of numbers like this, right? Or maybe you use two hyphens. It can vary. As another example, and this is what we'll work with right now, MAC addresses. So if you were searching a database for a MAC address, you could enter it multiple ways. The official format uses uppercase letters and colons. Oops, start with zero. But you could use lowercase letters instead, right? Or some people, I've seen this once or twice, use hyphens instead of colons. It's kind of weird, but it does happen. Other people use spaces. Actually, I'm not sure I've ever seen that, but we're going to go ahead and add it in. All right. This is fine, except there's a problem. See, if you're searching a database, we'll call it MacDB. The MAC address is only going to be stored in one format. We can't store every possible format of MAC address out there, right? So, the database only has one format. Anyone searching in a format that doesn't match that could end up with a false negative. What we need then is a way to take user input and make it equivalent to what's in the database. And we're going to do that by creating a function. Def, we'll call it normalization, and we are going to pass in MAC as the parameter. We're only going to take one parameter. Now, we need to return the output of the function. Here I'm using a built-in function of Python called lower, and that just turns the user input into lowercase letters. All right. Next, we're going to use the replace function. That takes two parameters, the portion we're removing and what we're replacing it with. Okay. So here we're going to remove the colon and replace it with nothing. No space, no other punctuation. We're going to do that again. Just string them together and replace hyphens with no space, no white space. Okay? And you know what? I've seen people use periods too. Let's add that in. We'll get our user input, and this is what he or she is going to type into the search engine, and then compare the input with what's in the database. And we'll do that with an if-else statement. So, if normalize MAC equals MAC database, we're going to print, found it, perfect, else print, I'm sorry, the address was not found. Please try another one. Okay. All right, let's run it. So we're going to use the database version first, just to make sure it's working. Okay. Great. Now, let's try one of the variants. Start at 0. Okay. Alright, let's try something random. That's pretty random. Awesome, did not find it. Perfect, good. Alright, let's try gibberish. Let's copy and paste this one. Great. Okay, so we're rejecting things that aren't in the database, but we're normalizing things that are. Alright, let's try one more thing. Let's remove the function and just compare our input with the database. Okay, so even though it's the same address, I couldn't find it because I didn't normalize, right? So we know our function works. All right, that is one way to do it. Store the data in your database at its most basic level, and then reduce the user input to that same level. All right, there are other ways to do it, and we're going to look now at normalizing phone numbers. All right, so now we're going to look at normalizing phone numbers. And just like MAC addresses, there are several ways to enter phone numbers. For example, you can use parentheses. That's the standard way of doing it, at least here in the US. Well, we put area code in parentheses. And then a hyphen goes between the other numbers. Other people might just have another hyphen instead of parentheses. Lastly, we can kind of squish them all together. Now, we obviously have the database and phone numbers. And like the MAC address, we're going to simplify it. We also need user input. Okay. Now, here's the fun part. Rather than reduce the user input and compare it to the database, we're going to use a Python function called isNumeric. And we're going to use an if-then statement. So if pn.isNumeric, and what we're looking for is to see if everything is a number, if it's not a number. So if pn.isNumeric is false, the character is not a number, then we're going to pass an error message. Otherwise, the phone number is correct. And in this case, we're actually going to go up here. Let's enter in the format. That will minimize incorrect entry. All right, so there we have it. Two different ways to normalize data with Python. These aren't the only ones, of course, but play around with them, use them in different projects, see how they work. And if you have any questions, leave a comment. I will try to respond.